Well, Victorian farmers have staged a protest against proposed laws that would see them fined more than $12,000 if they refuse to allow transmission line workers onto their land. The government is trying to roll out 240 k's of transmission lines that will cut across about 250 private properties, many of which are owned by farmers who fear the renewable rollout will destroy their livelihoods. Victoria Opposition Leader Brad Batten made an appearance at the rally. Here he is.
We are opposed to the legislation they have put forward that will give them the rights and powers to bulldoze through your communities and bulldoze through your personal properties to ensure they can deliver what they want to deliver in a dictatorship style. It is simply not acceptable.
Joining me now is former New South Wales Treasurer Michael Costa and GXO Strategies Director Cameron Milner. Cameron, $12,000 fines for farmers who say, no, I don't want you on my property. It's extraordinary.
It is, and it's unacceptable. I mean, ultimately, these corporate cowboys who are running these transmission lines through private properties shouldn't be able to use the force of the law. They should get the community licence to operate. They should actually do a negotiation. They should actually come to an agreement. But if they can't do that, they shouldn't use legislation, and the government shouldn't use fines to force private property owners to comply. No, it's completely unacceptable. And as I say, these foreign-owned corporate cowboys shouldn't be allowed to get away with it.
And Michael, I can't help but compare what's happening to people in regional areas with this renewable rollout with people in, places like North Shore Sydney and others where renewable projects have been proposed and then after protest from locals, they suddenly disappear. People in regional areas get no such opportunity.
You're absolutely right, James. The hypocrisy of this doomsday cult has no bounds. And it's not just those wind turbines on the North Shore of Sydney. I mean, take the NIMBYs in terms of housing policy. We've got governments all over Australia trying to increase density in these inner city suburbs where most of these people either support the Greens or support the Teals, and they're out in arms trying to stop that, yet they're happy for other people in regional New South Wales to lose access to their private property rights. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. It's part of this mad doomsday cult. It's going to lead to the deindustrialisation and also, unfortunately, the decline in our agriculture as well as our mining. And, we saw this doomsday cult in its full display this week with that fool from the UN saying that we're not going to have fruit and vegetables. Well, we won't have it if you keep taking the land away.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Rowan Dean a little later in the program because there's now concerns that livestock grazing close to renewable projects like solar farms and wind turbines could be affected and become essentially worthless. So it's not like these farmers complaining are just making their concerns up. And the fact the government won't listen but just say you will allow these people onto your property, you'll allow them to do what they do, otherwise we'll fine you like you're criminals, is just quite obscene. I want to stay on the whole renewable subject for a moment because even with their dictatorial approach to energy policy, federal Labor's target to have 82% renewable energy by 2030 seems to be slipping further and further out of reach. We learned today there hasn't been any construction of new wind farms this year, and that comes after former Labor climate advisor Ross Garnaut warned Australia is on track to miss its renewable targets by a big margin. His words, due to a lack of investment. Michael, Chris Bowen has announced that Labor will increase the capacity investment scheme by 25% to try and get these renewable projects going. In other words, they're just going to throw more taxpayer dollars at it.
And it won't work, James, and it won't work. I mean, they're already throwing money. These projects are uneconomical, and that's the reality. No private sector is going to invest unless they have their risk mitigated. And unless the government chooses to completely underwrite that risk, you're not going to see any investment in these things. We will not meet that target. The target's unrealistic. The target does very little in terms of net zero in any event, as we know, because a lot of the so-called carbon pollution, and I say so-called, is outside of the energy sector. It's in transport and other areas. And, the whole thing is a farce. But the government's throwing more money at this is not going to solve the problem. It's just not viable.
Yeah, how much money do you need to solve the problem? The answer is the same, always, just a little bit more. Cameron, do you ever get the feeling, as I do, that Labor are walking us straight into a cul-de-sac when it comes to energy?
Well, I think we have to have this debate, and the problem is that the carbon tax that Garneau came out again with, rolled off the cuff again, Michael, we would have been through this war together in terms of the Labor Party, is not the solution, and politically it's not acceptable either. But we do have to talk energy transition, and we do have to talk about the fact that we aren't funding coal-fired baseload power any longer in Australia. Our generators are getting older and older. And to your point, Michael, about industrial capacity, about manufacturing capacity, energy is the key. Energy is the key. So we do have to have a debate about where we're going to get cheap, reliable power from going forward. Now, if it's not going to be coal, perhaps gas. Unfortunately, nuclear hit the fence at the last federal election. I support nuclear. But we do have to have a proper debate, James, about how we're going to reliably get cheap energy to keep our jobs in Australia.
Well, that's my concern. I mean, it seems we can't have coal. We increasingly can't have gas. We've decided we can't have nuclear. So we're stuck with solar and wind, which clearly are not going to do the job. Hence, cul-de-sac approaching rapidly.